Hello everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of our Express with E segment on View TV by Vijay Bhumi. It's a special weekly episodic segment where we discuss topics of great importance and that require immediate attention with students. Today being no different, we have with us Sneha Parikh from Javishan International School and Saurya Goel from Manav Rachna International School. We are going to discuss about the effect of war on our global economy and how war affects the common lives and the economy as such. So welcome guys for today's panel discussion. Glad to have you on our panel board.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for having us here.
Thank you, Saurya. Thank you, Sneha. So starting with off, Sneha, can you just state us some of the major impacts of war on global economy? Like what do you think are the major impacts as such? If we
Yeah, sure. I can go with that. So keeping in mind the current war situation, the Russia-Ukraine war, the main thing basically is inflation, the rise in products like commodity products. So there's rise in oil and gas prices, and it is also creating, you know, it's basically devastating the global economy.
yeah.
I know my friend Shaurya would, accompany me on that. If you have something else to say.
Yeah, Saurya.
Right. So I completely agree with what Sneha said. There are a lot of negative implications of war on the global economy. I would say that the list is like absolutely endless. As she said, that there can be inflation, price rises because because all the countries impose taxes on trades. There can be livelihood problems of people, and especially there can be problems related to employment, food scarcity, and the education of children as well.
Great. It is, you guys have highlighted some major points as you mentioned about inflation and the rise of prices, and also like Russia-Ukraine crisis, the current conflict going on. It has been a great example to set on for the like for economists around the world and students like us, where we can have a great case study and also present our topics like how the war, how the negative implications of the war is affecting the economy as such. So going ahead with this thing, like as Sneha has already mentioned about the Russia-Ukraine conflict, why do Russia and Ukraine work create this stagflation, and how it threatens the global economy as such? Because as we have heard, like it's quite peculiar to hear, there are two countries are fighting as in one part of the globe, but it is affecting all the people across the world.
Yeah.
So if you for the easy terms for the viewers, like if you want to explain like how, if you have got some examples or if you can state some facts or views, uh,
So
how it's affecting.
stagflation as a term, it's basically inflation plus unemployed. So it's that. And again, keeping in mind the current situation, so triggered by the Ukraine conflict, it has raised the threat of the worst stagflationary shock to hit Europe since the 1970s. And Europe is in a high risk of plunging into like a deep recession. US economy could also be hurtling towards a recession. There is sky high energy and commodity prices, hyperinflation, and a rapidly flattening yield curve, and a slowing economy signal like this is which is basically showing that nothing is going well around. Yeah.
Great points, Sneha. Sorry, have you got anything to add on?
Right. So all those points are great, and I completely agree with them. They are pretty important to keep in mind. So basically, another aspect of the war, basically, which I feel is that wars basically through social media. Like we all saw that, like people were posting the situation of people in Ukraine on social media. So it was like very triggering for all of us. The psychological and emotional impact which people through all of the world suffer from is one thing to keep in mind. Furthermore, as we are like focusing on the economies of the world, so let's say India, for example. India is an oil importing nation, and Russia is a major oil importer to India. So India, I feel, should be involved in a conflict of duties as to what it has to do with Russia, because if it does not support Russia, then India has a threat of not getting oil in the future. Furthermore, also Russia supplies a lot of almost all the weapons the Indian army use comes from Russia. So India comes to be involved in a conflict of duties with all the other neighbors. So Yeah, there are a lot of things which happen around the world.
Not even India, but Russia and Ukraine are the major suppliers of crude oil and so because of that, since there have been sanctions and the exports from Russia and Ukraine are not possible right now. So of course the prices of these commodities have increased, therefore hyperinflation, and therefore the oil which we get from the Middle East, their prices are like soaring high. And Indonesia, it also exports oil, but it has banned to export oil until it can provide its own country. So therefore
Yeah.
it's like major countries like US and Europe are in the risk of hitting a recession.
Hmm.
Right.
That's the biggest impact because it's all, I mean, it's all out there.
Yeah, certainly. I guess there were some pretty good points shared by you guys, and even thinking about this point, by as we talked about, these two countries are like a lot of countries are boycotting, and as we talked about the Indonesia case,
Yeah.
Indonesia is not willing to share its exports, and even a lot of countries are not in a condition or not in a mood to have trade with Russia
Russia.
because they are
Yes.
just cutting down the trade off with Russia.
Not
So that
even trades. They're like companies like IKEA, which are like
yeah,
removing their entire production
operation.
industries, factories. Operations in Russia have been closed. Russian, football teams, everything, they're not allowed to play.
Right. Like Russia has been like completely isolated from the
Mm.
like world politics and global economy. Nike, Adidas, Apple have all like closed down
Yeah.
their showrooms in the country.
Certainly, I guess in one of our previous episodes, we discussed about how Russia has been isolated case and how Russian-Ukraine conflict is major affecting the economy, in the global economy as such. So there we discussed how Russia has been affected badly. So coming to our discussion, as we guys mentioned about this inflation and the price rises, and there is a shortage of products for if the country has been in a bigger is a importer of a particular good, then there is a shortage of that particular product in across the nation. So this creates a rise of the prices because of the shortage of the product. So this is basically inflation, what we feel like. Uh,
Yeah.
do you guys also feel because these are some external countries, two countries are fighting for a war. If there is any internal war, there are cases like in Sri Lanka right now, we are having there is different ethnic groups are fighting for a cause. Different ethnic groups are fighting for a region, and even we have seen other countries where there are cultural differences, or there are ethnic differences, or there are religious differences, or minorities attacking the majority. If we have something war internally, does that would that also affect the global economy as such?
I mean,
Sorry.
definitely.
Yes.
Because yeah, go on, sorry.
Yeah, definitely. Like even the Indian history is like full of examples of the communal violence between the Hindu and Muslim communities. So it was definitely not aloof from the world politics. And as you mentioned that there was a cold war between the Sinhala and the Tamil community for the imposition of Sinhalese as the official language. So
Yeah.
that was also not aloof from the world politics. Like war of any kind, big scale, small scale, is definitely going to impact the entire globe in a certain manner.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
A
Anything
second.
else to add on? Yeah.
No, I definitely second to that.
Great, great. I guess pretty much. I guess that is something we should be working on in diplomatic relations to not create any war-related conditions as such. There was this thing which was quite discussed in the social media as well. The neighboring countries who are basically, if we talk about Russia and Ukraine, the neighboring countries across the line, and also if it's an internal war, if it's like Sri Lanka. So Sri Lanka, maybe the Sri Lanka is a producer of some of the other products. So neighboring countries are most affected ones. Why the such? So is it any particular reason you have got?
It's because neighboring countries, they have constant trades, exports with the countries. Also, if we see there is increase in refugee flows, also like right now, Russia. So businesses from Russia are like fleeing because of course people are boycotting Russia as we discussed. So there are a lot of sanctions which have been put on. So therefore businesses are fleeing from Russia and going to countries like Georgia and Armenia. So therefore I guess, I mean, the businesses in Armenia and Georgia would also feel an increase in competition in their own market because external companies are fleeing and coming into their country. There's a lot of reasons it's been affected because of trade, exports, which have been, stopped, and high prices, everything. Because Russia, it supplied gas to, I guess, Finland, if I'm correct.
Mhm.
So now, as it stopped, Finland has gone out of the, it doesn't have electricity. It does, I guess. Right now, I'm not very sure about that.
Yeah, they're
But
working on ways to get it
yeah,
sorted.
but therefore they have to, switch. Therefore, because of that, also there's increase in carbon emissions because they have to shift to like nuclear energy, or if they're using solar energy, that's different. But then still, yeah. But not going off topic, it's majorly because of the stopping in trade and exports, and also businesses fleeing to the neighboring countries, and therefore in their own country, the increase in competition and survival of businesses. That's there. If anything, Shauri would like to add.
Yes, that was some great points, Neha. Honestly speaking, one point which I would like to add is that the neighboring countries and the country which is in, which are involved in wars, basically they constitute the same geopolitical space. So that is one reason why neighboring countries are affected a lot. For instance, if I would consider any random person, I believe on general, not this won't apply to everybody. He or she would not prefer to go for a vacation in any neighboring country of which the neighbors are, they are involved in war. So basically, the tourism of the neighboring countries comes to be affected as well. And, it also leads to the rise of hatred among people, because people of neighboring countries are going to definitely, tamper their neighbors for saying that, because of them, we also have to face this. So yes, neighboring countries are definitely affected, and it also leads to further progression of the hatred and the war.
Yeah, also, like, if we're talking about tourism, Russian tourists are a top visitor. Like in Georgia, it remains exposed to this. Georgia is a neighboring country of Russia. Am I visible?
No.
Wait, 1 second.
Yes, Neha. You can continue. Yeah.
Just a second. Just a second. I'm just
Yeah.
sorry. 1 second. Just have to do this. Yeah. So Russian tourists are like a top visitor in Georgia, and therefore their World Tourism and Travel Council estimates that tourism supports like 10% of Georgian jobs. So, as for trade, last year 55% of Georgia's wine exports were sold to Russia. But now, of course, there's nothing as such going on. So therefore, the neighboring countries are affected the most, I feel.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this brings to me.
And like they are affected the most because they do not have any fault. Like that's the main part here. They are affected even though they have nothing to do with it. So that's the sad part.
Yeah, of course.
Certainly. So this brings to a different perspective to talk about. Like as Neha mentioned about this point of refugees. Yeah, certainly refugees when come from they flee from they flee to the neighboring countries. So there is a shortage of the resources, because the resources has to be equally divided with the refugees as well, and there is a shortage of resources. That's
Also,
point. Business is also affected. But talking about, as you mentioned, about intense competition occurring in the neighboring countries, it could be the opposite around also. The neighboring countries can take it as an opportunity. Can take it an opportunity to build up new relations.
Positive.
This could be the positive informations also. But certainly the negative information, the negative implications are more than as we are expecting from a positive. It's like
yes,
if someone is running better than you are just trying to pull it off, or you're trying to snatch his
like it's also their own, like there is more competition in their own country, right? If businesses from other places are fleeing into my country, like people have more choices in my country, you see, and when they're fleeing, they might also be able to reduce their prices a little to attract more customers. So the internal companies of their own country, like as due to the things happening in Russia, due to the current war situation, Armenia, oh my God, I'm very sorry. Armenia, it's like a very, very attractive destination to businesses. So
Yeah.
they're all being there. So yeah, so there's of course competition increases, but also it's also a good thing for Armenia as well because
Yeah. So as we're talking about the opportunity, because like a lot of, if as for Russia, like a lot of businesses have cut off their links and cut off their business links with Russia. So other countries can take up this opportunity to build up the relationships, and new business relationships can form, and that can be opportunity
institution
for
is
them.
growing, so more employment,
Yeah, truly.
businesses, collaborate.
Collaboration will work out. So that's a great point. But certainly, the war has the negative implications more than this opportunity cost. So the
Yeah.
opportunity cost can be defined by the negative implications which we had. So moving ahead, like as we are continuously discussing about the scarcity of resources and how this is like most affecting the common people, because I'm pretty much sure the inflation is not inflation, the rich folks, the HNIs, they can beat this inflation, but it is going to directly affect the person, the basically the daily wage laborers who are
Yep.
relying on, like if a single price of the onion or a single price of the potato is going to increase, that's going to affect the consumption. Indirectly that's going to affect the nutrition, and there is a, yeah, that's going to be affecting, that's the
Yep.
basically the repercussions we are going to line up.
Yes.
So how the scarcity of resources creates tension and pressing needs for common people? Because I was like last, I guess, a couple of days back, I was watching a video on one of the news channels about the condition of Sri Lanka. So the bread prices have been really high. Okay, and people are like starving. People are starving, and people are starving. The children are over there starving. So there is a case of malnutrition over the spaces. So how this creates a pressing needs, the how this creates a tension around it, and anything can be done, or any initiatives can be done to solve this case for
Yeah.
common people.
Adding on to what you were saying, like from Russia, there was also when the pandemic in China, when they had a lockdown in Shanghai,
Yeah.
there were videos of people screaming from their houses
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
the scarcity of resources, they were so limited, and there was like a blackout completely. You see, there was electricity was limited, food was limited, everything. So it
Yeah.
does
True.
make you wonder when it can, happen, blackouts and stuff. But yeah, not drifting apart from the topic. So scarcity and energy price rises during these current situation have led to an all-out scramble for every available energy source to deal with shortage, including coal, the reduction of which is to increase the carbon dioxide emissions, as I mentioned earlier. But far from being reduced, the coal use is reaching like historic highs as a source for generating electricity. The war has breathed new life into fossil fuel industries, which put on hold any talk of how urgent it is to transition into more forms of renewable sources with less negative environmental impact. So, even the debate on turning on to more nuclear energy has been revived, both in Japan and also in Germany. Although there are remains of little chance of it happening. Also to note, Russia is the main supplier of uranium to Germany.
Certainly.
Yeah.
So, Sneha, just ending with this topic, so any initiatives or anything, any solutions you want to propose, like how we can build this thing? Because the common people for this, as you mentioned about the scarcity of resources, is a bigger tension. So, any initiatives or any solutions you feel like that you can propose on
Scarcity of resources.
to beat this scarcity of resources or to help out just common folks?
Firstly, there are like in our country, I don't think we are definitely facing inflation, higher price rises, and everything. But I do feel that there should be, on because it's a worldly affair, but it has to be managed individually. So I definitely do think that there should be, laws passed on if possible for everyone to have some kind of vegetables or food grown in, their households if they can, in societies and colonies, even with the amount, and also only certain amount of food, in a week, so that there's no wastage of food or commodity resources. Also a certain amount of electricity, a certain amount of timing when the water will, come to places, so that
Yeah.
there's no wastage done, and also the utilization is, also like I said, growing of vegetables and rainwater harvesting when the rain starts, but at an individual level, because I mean global problems also can be like, solved only when you start from an individual level, to be honest. That's what I think. What do you think, Shaurya?
Yeah, actually, I was going to say something on the similar notes. They can definitely, firstly, like we should definitely, use the available resources judiciously, so we can, save the power backup and we can use them for a longer period of time. But I personally feel that the scarcity of resources, which is created by the implications of war all over the globe, can be solved by the individual efforts of the common people, but more importantly, the individual efforts of the country's diplomats and officials. Basically, such matters have to be dealt all over the globe. It's not just one country which will be facing scarcity of resources. Almost every country which is involved indirectly or directly will be facing some kind of scarcity. So international organizations like, for example, the UN, which was also criticized a lot because of the Russia-Ukraine war, they were not able to, mediate the crisis effectively. I feel that they should become a bit more proactive, and their councils like the HRC or SC, they should become a bit more proactive and pass resolutions as to how countries and officials have to deal with such scarcity of resources.
Also, to add, for energy, the countries should shift to more of the renewable sources like wind energy or solar energy. There's such a heat wave going on. But yeah, the cost definitely. So there will have to be like measures taken for that. But I definitely think if we shift to that and also not, get into fossil fuel industries like
Yes.
talking about, that will be really beneficial to the environment also. We have to keep the environmental impact into the measures.
Pretty much, I guess that's were some great points, guys. As talking about, Sneha has mentioned about this growing your own veggies, like growing your veggies and talking like
Rainwater harvesting.
managing the resources which you have available, rainwater harvesting, setting up solar panels. If you have got a good terrace, then set up the solar panels and basically making yourself full-fledged with the resources. Okay, self-sustenance. So there's some good initiative which can, on an individual level, which we can take on. And Shaurya has mentioned keep this sort of crisis can be handled much better by having good diplomatic relations with other countries and setting up and building up international on an international level where the diplomats can go for building up international relations and they can fight against the solutions. So probably, I guess the best part to resolve this issue, like even you guys will also agree, is keep when all the global leaders will come together and they will support each other, back each other with the resources. I guess that's the best way to come in forward, where we can see a diversity, where a diversity is united, where the global diversity is united for a cause. So that's the best way to do it. And yeah, probably the international bodies like UN should be more proactive, as Shaurya has mentioned, to combat the situation, so that it could be expected. It is expected from them. They should be more proactive, or else there won't be any condition where we can mitigate or we can start what I can say, having some conversations to end this war. So that was a nice topics, and it was a great topic to discuss on. And seeing you guys talking about this economy and having a great understanding, that makes quite confident for us to believe on the change makers, because as we are the change makers of the future, we should be surely conscious enough about how the war is affecting a global economy, and we would be working on a condition where we would be not accepting this sort of tolerance by the global leaders, or we shouldn't be expecting this sort of situation again at any point of time, because as we just had a conversation since the last half an hour, we were just discussing about how it affects the global economy. So each and everyone's life is important, affected more than the rich folks is the poor folks who are affected.
Yes.
Yeah, even apart from the economy, there are psychological effects, a lot of effects, culture shocks, many.
True, I guess, yeah, true. Even families are lost, relationships are broken.
Yeah, like people in Ukraine literally have had to come out and fight in the war. Like the people, the civilians. That's not something which is, I wouldn't want to face that in my life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's terrifying.
That is something used to happen in like the before century era, like BC and AD. Right now, something is happening right now. Like we have, I guess we have heard of these cases. Like if I like.
And in those centuries also, there were like, yeah, I do know that men went to fight and everything. But now there are women, actresses, activists, everybody, literally, people with full of country love just on the war ground.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely don't think war is a solution. But yeah, the situations right now are pretty complicated. So,
Good thoughts, Sneha. Great, guys. It was a great discussion. There were a lot of takeaways from this discussion, and the proposed solutions maybe we can work on an individual level and also propagate the same with our friends and families, so that we can be a combat. We can combat this sort of situation at a personal level, at an individual level. And thank you guys for joining for this panel discussion.
thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having me here again. It is always a pleasure to